African Americans represent nearly 13% of the U.S. population. In the text, Counseling the Culturally Diverse, to effectively work with African American clients, therapists must be knowledgeable of cultural history, characteristics, ethical and racial identity, religious and spiritual beliefs, family structure, and community. Racism and discrimination are significant concerns within the African American community, and structural racism in terms of income, education, and health are realities. There is race-based trauma that time does not heal. This collective trauma is a part of history, and despite the passage of the Civil Rights Act and anti-discrimination legislation, there remains an ugly underbelly of racism in society. Paradoxically, there is also much to be celebrated and proud of within the African American community. The characteristics of hard work, racial pride and identity, strong religious and spiritual values, church communities, and family bonds that are strong and extend beyond the nuclear unit provide resiliency. The essential elements of counseling African Americans. Building trust and support is critical to creating a sense of safety for clients. Too often, counselors jump to diagnosis and treatment because the mental health system encourages them to have a solid plan and work toward a goal fairly early in treatment. However, by slowing down and first investing time in establishing a good working relationship will help to reduce therapy termination. The first therapy sessions are crucial in determining whether a client will return, and African Americans have a high rate of therapy termination. As illustrated in the Sue text, one African American client stated, "I am assessing to see if that person, the counselor, is willing to go that extra mile and speak my language and talk about my blackness." Broaching the subject of race. Counselors, not clients, should be the first to broach issues of racism. This isn't necessarily easy or comfortable. Being comfortable enough to broach the topic does not mean the topic itself will be comfortable. There are some conversations we will always feel some discomfort talking about, and that's okay. But clients should feel safe enough to share their experiences, ones that will often be uncomfortable for counselors to hear. Part of the counseling skill set is learning how to have these discussions in a way that feels comfortable. For example, can counselors say the word black, acknowledge their own ethnic identities, or discuss racism knowledgeably? If not, then clients know they won't be able to go beyond a surface-level discussion with them. Ask questions to understand and listen to the answers. Counselors can open a conversation by saying, "I just want to check in. There's a lot going on around us right now. What's that been like for you?" Or, "I'm curious how you as a Black American might be affected by racial violence and oppression." Recognize strengths as well as societal challenges and oppression. A strength-based approach to mental health views individuals experiencing mental health challenges in terms of their assets and resources which can be surfaced and utilized to overcome stressors. This is in contrast to a deficits-based approach that underscores what is missing, wrong, or abnormal about an individual and their circumstances, which can be disempowering. By accessing assets such as racial pride, community, rich cultural traditions, religious and spiritual beliefs, counselors can empower clients. However, nurturing these sources of strength should not come at the cost of acknowledging and responding to the actual harm done to African Americans via racial discrimination that persists to this day. Demonstrate humility. Counselors are encouraged to explore ways to address cultural issues in session in ways that are culturally humble and respect the client's cultural background and experiences. The ability to initiate cultural conversations and take advantage of opportunities to explore the cultural background of the client in session are important aspects of developing a multicultural orientation and working effectively with culturally diverse clients. Examples of engaging cultural issues with humility and respect include being curious about cultural issues, asking questions that indicate willingness to learn and explore, being non-judgmental, and communicating openness about different worldviews rather than viewing one's own perspective as best or ideal. Be aware, be self-aware of biases and worldview. The importance of counselors reflecting honestly on their own experiences and biases is essential. This self-awareness starts with counselors' training and working with diverse clients as the best way to learn to appreciate differences and to examine one's own biases and beliefs. Agreement with author's presentation of African Americans. Culturally sensitive clinical care and the need to understand how biases may impact client well-being. Clients report that their therapists commit racial microaggressions, subtle, sometimes unintentional, racial slights during treatment. Whether subtle, moderate, or overt, microaggressions likely contribute to the high rate of therapy termination for African Americans. Next, agreement with author's presentation of African Americans are the hidden struggles. Code switch. In the wake of the killing of George Floyd and the protests that ensued, a less visible impact of racial violence was evidenced, described as, quote, the private weariness and anguish felt by many black people in the country. In other words, many black people are exhausted, suffering from the fatigue of discrimination and injustices that they experience daily. They often find it necessary to code switch, changing the way they talk and express themselves when they are outside of their homes and black communities. Code switch, the late W.E.B. Du Bois, world-renowned scholar and civil rights advocate, alluded to the concept of code switching more than a century ago when he wrote about African Americans reckoning with dual identities, blackness and Americanness. Du Bois wrote, "It is a peculiar sensation, this double consciousness, this sense of always looking at oneself through the eyes of others, of measuring one's soul by the tape of a world that looks on in amused contempt and pity. One ever feels his two-ness, an American, a Negro, two souls, two thoughts, two unreconciled strivings, two warring ideals in one dark body whose dogged strength alone keeps it from being torn asunder." This sense of being is a testament of resilience, for code switching is a way of performing, so to speak, and role-playing to fit in with a white dominant culture. Switching roles, having to constantly pause and consider how much you can share and what is your role in this new context, and always aware of what you can and can't say and what you can and can't do is exhausting. It's emotionally draining, and emotional exhaustion is one reason that black individuals seek counseling. Therefore, it is important for counselors to create safe places where clients can be themselves. Readings and research reflect great diversity among African Americans. Assess the client's values and preferences by identifying their expectations and worldview and what they believe counseling entails. Explore their feelings about counseling. Determine how they view the problem and possible solutions. Keep at the forefront of the counselor's thinking that African Americans are becoming increasingly heterogeneous in terms of ethnic and racial identity, beliefs, social class, educational level, and political orientation. Conclusion. The African American experience differs as each individual is unique even within the umbrella of cultural groups. A reminder never to stereotype or generalize clients based on race or ethnicity. As the Sioux text points out, learning about the traditional values of various cultural groups is important to the development of our multicultural competence, but clients are individuals, and they may show some or none of the values that are traditionally associated with their culture. Therefore, while listening, reading, researching will help to prepare me for multicultural counseling, I must examine myself and hear my clients' stories with empathy, support, and a non-judgmental approach, always striving for competency and understanding.